Planning and Zoning Commission is composed of volunteer citizens appointed by the City Council. The Commission is including general plan amendments, rezones, conditional use permits, and amendments to the zoning code. Upon recommendation by the Commission, general plan amendments, rezones, and zoning code amendments proceed to action. For conditional use permits, the Commission will make a final decision subject to appeal. All hearings are conducted in accordance with the rules for procedure requirements open to the public under the Arizona Open Meeting Law. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced during the meeting. The Commission will discuss the case, may ask additional questions, and take action. Any member of the public wishing to speak must come
for Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Peoria. Start out with a quick roll call. Here. Commissioner Myers.
Present.
Commissioner Villasenor.
Present.
We got a full deck, so thank you all. Welcome. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and have been previous discussion unless any commissioner member so request. Or do I have a motion on the consent?
Chairman, I move that we approve the consent.
I second, Chair.
I guess we'll do a verbal roll call. And the motion passes unanimously. All right, next we'll go to, thank you.
Chair, members of the commission, I am back before you once again talking about major general plan. Together we will be tag teaming and presenting the items before you this evening. So I wanted to start off in state law.
Can I interrupt 1 sec? I'd just like to the public make a last call for so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for those who are wondering why we have a change in venue, one other item to touch on before I dive into the presentation, and that is the format for the, so my task before tonight is to break that down into salient points, each of the requests, including the basis and rationale for those requests and any analysis. There are some common areas of concern, so what I'm going to do is provide a paraphrase staff's response to those particular concerns. So those will be then incorporated into the conversation for commission. For those who are going to join us at the next meeting, so as noted, there are 4 distinct major general plan amendments being presented this evening. 3R is comprised of a text and map change to the Chapter 3 Smart Growth. That is case number G. Text changes to Chapter 6. That is Arts, Culture, Recreational. Ever for a general plan chapter. That is also known as GPA 24-03. Alternatively, the short text changes, also known as case GPA 24-05. So because we are talking about general plan amendments, the general plan is the city's overarching policy document guiding growth and development into the future. And because it is so comprehensive, people often confuse it with the zoning ordinance. They are not 20 to 40 years into the future. In reality, it has a built-in expiration of 10 years. So as that expiration date gets closer, state law the city to either go back and revise or come up with a brand new general plan for adoption. Once that is approved by the city, ratification was in 2020, and I'll touch on this point later in the presentation. So once ratified, practices and state law recognizes the general plan cannot and should not for the plan to remain responsive to evolving conditions, and because of that, they're in. And when appropriate, make changes. Those directives have been in place for decades. It's been in every general plan that Peoria has had, and it continues forward into this current plan as well. So that's a snapshot of what the plan is and what it does, and also our authority as a city to make changes when it's appropriate. So let me switch gears and get into the specifics. Let's start with item number 3, and bear with me, this will be the bulk of the presentation because this is pretty much the meat of the conversation. So in terms of the request, there are 2 in particular. The first one is we are asking to create a new state land use category and associated map changes for the North Peoria Gateway and Peoria Innovation Core. Secondly, there is a 6.6 acre land use map change for a private property, which we've touched on in the study sessions. So I'm going to start with request number 1. That is the land use category and the map changes. So our basis for asking for this request is the vast majority of the remaining developable land in Peoria is comprised of Arizona State Trust land. You will hear me use trust land quite a bit this evening. You will also hear me use the term ASLD, the Arizona State Land Department. Because the majority of our developable land is within state trust land, our long-term economic prosperity and quality of life is dependent on a collaboration with ASLD. And as a city, we desire to have a comprehensive approach to guide growth. We are going to grow. We want to be in the driver's seat for how that continues. So in order to understand really the justification for this proposal, you have to understand state trust in its entirety. This is one of the most complex planning conversations to have with even your own professionals, with commissioners, with elected officials, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. So for the next few slides, I'm going to break that down hopefully into bite-sized pieces, and congratulations, you're in advanced planning class right now. So the state land mission. They are in a managerial position of state trust lands and resources to enhance the value and optimize economic return for the trust beneficiaries. In total, there are 9.2 million acres of land throughout Arizona. 13 beneficiaries, the biggest of which is the Common Core schools K through 12. So this is one of the ways we fund education in Arizona. The trust is specifically funded through leases and land sales via auction. So not only do they have a managerial responsibility, they have a fiduciary responsibility to the state. So there are key considerations. First one is, and I got corrected, and I do apologize, is in the packet it said 44 square miles of trust land in Peoria. That is correct if you were talking about within city limits. There are actually 55 square miles of land in the municipal planning area, and that's different. So 55 square miles, that's a lot of real estate right there. One of the biggest misconceptions that we hear time and time again is trust land is open space. It is not. It really should be considered private property that's going to develop at some point in time. And so while there are similarities with private property, there are very specific differences in how it is treated. So by way of background, let's kind of look at the city and state land. We have existing state land within the city, and it is in both developed and undeveloped areas. This is a key difference in the second bullet point. It may be used for public use if it brings value to the beneficiaries up until the optimized value is reached. What does that mean? They can lease an area, it can bring value to the beneficiaries, but that is not the maybe long-term use of the land. So as long as they're bringing in value to the beneficiaries, they can use it for a public use. Once you have reached that optimized value, it can transfer ownership. Now this is different. When you look in the map, everything that you see in blue is state land. In contrast, the area that you see in yellow and green, that's Bureau of Land Management and Bureau of Reclamation. They have a recreational disposition only. They hold on to it. There is no change in status. So once you've hit that optimal value, you can sell it or lease it. You see a range of uses up there. It's not limited to one item. It can be residential, commercial, employment, agricultural, or natural resource extraction. Recent examples in Peoria specifically, the new homes going up into Alora Vita North and South, that is state trust land. Additionally, from the commercial standpoint, the commercial shops, the Vestar piece along Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant Parkway, most recently Canes and a few others, that is also state trust land being developed. So here is also something that is most special. There are unique statutory requirements. So private property, you have a specific set of standards. State land, completely set of statutory regulations, and those are established by the Arizona Enabling Act, the Arizona Constitution, and the state law. More specifically, state law directs the city of Peoria and every other municipality and government to integrate their lands into their future land use category. We need to provide growth throughout the city, and that includes growth via state land. There are significant areas, especially in the area that we're talking about, that retain the original general plan designation. These were established decades ago, and they may or may not be the best use. So what you see on the plan may be a placeholder from 1970 plus in there. When you go to develop vacant trust land, it may or may not, but it may more than likely require a major general plan amendment, which is impractical. That forgoes economic opportunities. While that is a definite drawback, that is not perhaps the most important distinction in the reason why we are here. If left as is, trust land has the high potential to develop in a disjointed manner without a mechanism within the general plan to put secondary guardrails for that not to occur. So let's get into the specifics in particular. We're asking to create a special land use category that recognizes the differences for state land versus private property. In particular, it will apply to lands of regional significance or well suited for disposition. It will be implemented through 2 zoning districts, and I'll touch on that in a moment. So the 2 districts selected are very intentional. They are PADs and PCDs, and Commission is well familiar with those particular districts. They allow you to customize the standards based on the area in question. They also have additional requirements built in that a traditional other zoning case does not. Proposed are North Peoria Gateway, approximately 62 or 1,620 acres. That's the approximate size of Lake Pleasant Heights, roughly. If you're is 6,700 acres, that's on the right. That is also, excuse me, so the Peoria Gateway is close to Alora Vita. The Peoria Innovation Core, that is close to. I do want to make 2 distinctions on here. So please take a look at this map, and I'll talk about it in a moment. General plan category is a mix of uses already. It has employment, mixed use, residential, the waterways, open space, etc. So there are already a mix of uses in these areas. We do consider going forward, there is an expectation of mix of uses to continue. To what degree, that PCD would then determine what the most appropriate mix would be. So let's talk current conditions. So right now, we don't have guardrails within the general plan. So these trust lands can develop today. There is no mechanism to group them together and have a comprehensive analysis and infrastructure put into place. So these disjointed individual products can happen right now. And those unguided growth potential is contrary to the specific growth and policy, the goals and policies within the general plan. The general plan asks us to grow in a smart manner. So because state trust land will develop, it really is a question of how can the city best shape that growth that is coming. The proposal before you ensures that there is smart stewardship of land and resources by requiring a comprehensive master planning effort to be done. It has a specific trigger that that element has to occur with next phase. This same approach has been an issue, has been recognized by other cities and counties within the Valley, Scottsdale, Pinal County, Queen Creek, Phoenix, among those others. We've seen this approach implemented successfully in those areas. So this is not a unique approach. It's a proven approach. So let's get into, it sounds great, how does it do that? So the PAD and the PCD zoning districts require that comprehensive planning, as I've talked about. Those requirements are already in the zoning ordinance today. This requirement this requirement allows the city and ASLD to establish a mix of compatible uses based on the specific area at the time of zoning. We look at each of these areas in particular and what makes sense. So while it looks like it could be a giant blob, there's actual specificity that occurs at the zoning level. This same type of approach is currently in use with the 3 master plan communities that you see on the screen. There is a category within the existing general plan that is called master planned area. There is a PCD zoning on each of these. This change does not negate any of the existing regulations in place. So as we move forward, the hillsides, the cultural areas, the sensitive areas, the washes, those regulations stay intact. All this does is pull this area together and say you need to comprehensively plan for the future with your infrastructure needs, et cetera. So why now? Peoria continues to experience growth in all sectors, all business sectors, all residential sectors. We are continued and poised for success in the future if we're able to leverage favorable conditions. We do have them. The North Peoria Gateway and the PIC are well positioned between regional employers. We weren't talking regional employers when we were doing the comprehensive update. That is a definite change that reshapes the conversation. And given our city's unique position to attract high-quality businesses, desired services, and lifestyle choices, that is why it makes sense to go forward with this proposal now. So the second request in this chapter, as I mentioned, is a 6.6 acre land use change. It is currently public use, and we are proposing to go to office and local commercial. Why? The original intention, this was the former Peoria Regional Medical Center. It was a heavy, intense, medical-only facility. That has gone away. So the city works with property owners to reset and take the first step on how to reposition their property. When that vision was originally set, the educational facilities adjacent to it and some of the offices and businesses around it weren't there. So it's time to look to see what makes sense in the area. Given where this is at, other areas, including the southeast corner of Joe Max and Lake Pleasant Parkway, recently also made the change to office and local commercial. So this particular request furthers the economic opportunity and the same character and intensity along Lake Pleasant Parkway. So we believe this is an appropriate change. One other point that I do want to make on this particular one, it does not negate the ability to provide medical on this particular location. It just broadens the ability to provide additional commercial retail with it. So you can still have medical if it makes sense. It just broadens it in terms of the range. Moving to chapter 4. So there are both text and map changes to this particular one. In terms of the text, it's just a recognizing that Peoria on the Go is no longer being moved forward. The other is it's removing the major and minor street classifications, and that's to align with our engineering standards. The other, and the one that takes the longest in terms of effort to do, revisions to the circulation map. So what you see on the screen in that middle image, that is the list of roadway segments that we changed. This effort is solely intended as a maintenance to change and recognize existing roads. We also look at our crystal ball and how well did we do, what do we need to make changes to for our future infrastructure needs. We also work with our agency partners to make adjustments on our boundaries as well. So 90% of the effort for this particular one was a maintenance obligation. And for those that have been a part of the conversation, why the future versus existing? So when we have the future on the map, that's our projected, we turn it to existing once it's done. When does that occur? Going through the capital improvement program and through private development once they build the roads. So these same updates occurred in 2018 and 2019 through city-initiated amendments. So for those who were on the commission, we had the same conversation at that point in time as well. Chapter 5, the longest title ever. This one is pretty short. So we were, as part of the maintenance obligations within this particular chapter, we were obligated to look at the park classifications and update them according to best industry practices. In particular, we added a couple of new categories in there to recognize what we have within the city: open space and conservation lands and conservation park. We also wanted to do a better job at defining and celebrating our 3 recreation centers and bring as much value as they bring within our overall quality of life in the city. So that is fundamentally it. It's not long and lengthy, it's pretty straightforward, it's just best industry practices on that one. Item 6R, Chapter 8, Implementation. So this is a specific request and a revision to Table 8.1. That is the criteria for defining a minor and major amendment. It clarifies the intent. When we were going through and doing the update, we wanted to not spend a lot of time and effort going through major amendments because of maintenance obligations. We thought we got close, but we missed. So we need to clarify what our original intent was, which was if you're realigning a roadway or you're changing it from future to existing, shouldn't have to wait for a major amendment process to do it. That is a simple maintenance obligation. You're taking it from a dashed line to a straight line. So we're moving that into the none category. So we can do that in a more timely basis. Now, one thing to point out, as we've talked about, it does not eliminate the requirements for new and future roadways. So there are still requirements where a major and minor amendment will need to occur in those other categories. This is simply a maintenance obligation. So let's talk public outreach. So major general plan amendments are unique in that there is a required 60-day review. Back in our previous conversations before council and commission, we talked about, as standard practice, we always reach out to the agencies. However, from a regulatory standpoint, state law requires it when a major amendment occurs. So we already do that for anything, but in particular, we do it for the major amendment. We sent it out. The review started April 12th, ended on June 19th. The information was posted to the website where they could download, provide comments, etc. We received 2 letters, acronyms. I'll try to be nice about it. So the Arizona Department of Transportation reached out and said no comments, no changes requested. Arizona Game and Fish, we appreciated that they reached out and read thoroughly through the report. I appreciate somebody who takes the time to read through the full general plan. Generally, the comments that they provided were outside the limited scope of what we were doing. So we have those reserved. Some may be incorporated into a future update when we're having a more robust update. Others we'll talk about and identify where we're taking care of those items through either the sustainability plan, through the zoning ordinance, or through our design standards. So they may not be most appropriate within the general plan, but we'll tell them how we're going to execute that in those specific areas. Lastly, we did reach out specifically to Peoria and Deer Valley Unified School District. No comments were received from either one. In terms of noticing methods, we use a variety for these type of cases: website, legal ads, utility buildings, digital and print media. We have been before council and commission a number of times, as you see on the screen. We also had 2 open house meetings, April 23rd, which was in person at this location, April 25th, which was virtual Teams platform. In both of those cases, or instances, about 50 to 55 people attended those events. The comments were about the same on each of those, so I'll talk about those in a minute. So for those who know me, know that when I receive correspondence, I count individuals and not numbers of emails and letters that I receive, because I want to be across the board and be fair. So out of the correspondence that I received, 39 individuals commented. That is compiled into an errata sheet, which is basically a spreadsheet outlining the name of the individual, the method of contact, if they were commenting on a particular case, and generalize the comment. In your packet, you'll see that summary. Also included is all of that correspondence behind it as well. So to summarize, we had 1 individual opposed to all of the amendments. We had 2 individuals opposed to the land use modifications within GPA 24-01. That's the smart growth section. 1 individual asked for additional information and commented on GPA 24-02, that was the transportation, and in particular, because of the circulation map, they asked for a clarification. We had 12 individuals opposed to Chapter 8 modifications. That in particular, of those 12, 9 cited the land use threshold, 2 also cited the state land criteria changed. Now, as we were going through the process, we had additional modifications proposed to Chapter 8. Based on comment received, it wasn't, we pulled those back. And so those were removed on April 25th, 2024. So that is why you do not see that within the packet itself. The remaining individual just cited general opposition to any change to any of the criteria within that table. Lastly, I received correspondence from 24 individuals who provided no specific comments about the general plan proposal itself. However, the majority cited displeasure with Peoria exploring the potential for an air park. So of that correspondence, and what we heard at the open houses, there were 3 prevailing areas of concern and opposition cited. So paraphrasing, first comment was all major amendments should go to the voters. Next one was, excuse me, we're opposed to the general plan amendments because they will allow an airport to go in. Last one was the land use threshold should remain unchanged. And as I noted, that was pulled from the proposal on April 25th. The last one is just a perfunctory maintenance obligation for the circulation map. So in the next couple slides, I'm going to talk about staff's response to number 1 and number 2. So the desire is, in the statement was, all major amendments should go to the voters. State law is very specific in that it states the governing body, which in this case for Peoria is the city council, they're required to act upon the general plan and any amendments thereof. So voters play a limited but an important role when it comes to the general plan, and that is to ratify the general plan. So what does that mean? As I mentioned, the effectiveness of the general plan is 10 years. Once you get close to expiration, you either need to renew that plan or you need to go back and have a brand new plan. But that plan goes to city council for the decision, and upon their approval of the plan, then it is sent out for voter ratification. So if the general plan is approved at the ballot, it resets that time extension. It becomes good for 10 years. They're not voting on the plan, they're actually voting on the effectiveness timeframe of the plan. So what does that mean? Does that mean my voice isn't heard? No. That's why I talk about the public outreach components of this process. There are opportunities along the way to have the conversation, and ultimately it is up to the elected leaders to make the decision on whether these amendments go forward or not. So state law does not prohibit general plan amendments. Very specifically, it outlines the process for major general plan amendments. It also allows the city to establish the minor and major amendment criteria, which is what you saw in Chapter 8. And both minor and major amendments occur on a regular basis, and they are always transmitted to City Council for their decision. Going into the next item. We are opposed to the general plan amendments because they will allow an airport to go in. So I want to spend a couple moments on this one. The Peoria Air Park is an independent and multi-year exploration process with multiple studies that are either completed, planned, or currently underway to guide in the project evaluation process. The air park exploration process is separate from the general plan amendments being proposed. It has its own timeline, its own outreach process, analysis, and decision points. So let me put a finer point on this. If the general plan amendments fail, does that stop the air park process? The answer is no. When you think back to the previous air park conversation, that didn't have a general plan amendment attached to it. These are completely separate items. What does happen when you not go forward with this proposal is that we are not growing in the smartest possible manner. So regardless of the air park conversation, we would be moving forward with this amendment because it makes sense. Our most strategically situated lands are along the 303 area and Lake Pleasant Parkway, and they are designated state trust lands. And the only ability to put the guardrails that we're talking about is through establishing this land use category and those zoning requirements and that master planning requirement in place. So thank you guys for sitting through. I'm going to summarize quickly and we're going to wrap this up. So key findings. Again, general plan should be considered a living document that needs to be periodically revised and reconsidered to reflect new conditions. These amendments were processed in accordance with both state law and the general plan provisions. These constitute an overall amendment to the plan, and they're not solely for the benefit of one particular landowner or owners. The smart growth amendment in particular provides better stewardship of our land and resources, along with that comprehensive planning of infrastructure within these strategic areas that we're talking about. And finally, proposed changes clarify and satisfy the maintenance obligation, and it advances the recreational enrichment goals and policies of the general plan. So last slide. As I noted before and I started, tonight is the first of 2 meetings. No action may be taken this evening. So what we are recommending, Chair, is if you would, please open up the meeting and allow for public testimony, and I will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Deaver. Another fine presentation. Appreciate you. Commissioners, do we have any comments, questions? We're going to go verbal, so Commissioner Cottrell.
Thank you, Ms. Deaver. Very, very informative as always. I was wondering if you could provide some staff opinion comparing what you're proposing here with what City of Phoenix just went through on their, made the news on their state trust land that just sold at auction. Did Phoenix do a similar process? Are you using that as a case example or anything like that? Can you comment?
Chair and Commissioner, respectfully, I'm not as familiar with Phoenix, so let me say this, that Pinal Queen Creek, very specifically and intentionally, most recently established this particular land use type of category and moved forward with those zoning districts. Forgive me, I'm not as familiar with Phoenix, but because their structure is so different, I wouldn't want to take a guess as to what in particular they did.
I was just asking if there, if you had any examples of other cities that did this that have already occurred and the trust land was auctioned, and if it was successful or not, basically.
Yeah, and if I made it, just to put a finer point on it, what this designation does is it's a commitment to move forward and do the forthcoming land use planning, the zoning entitlement. And again, the zoning is very much separate from the general plan. It'll set the land uses, the development standards, the setbacks, all of those things happen at the zoning level. So we have examples already in our city, and this is what Lori mentioned earlier in our presentation. She mentioned the master planned area category for several of the master plans that we have. You look at Estancia, Lake Pleasant Heights, and Saddleback. They all have their underlying PCD or Planned Community District, which sets out all of the development standards that I just mentioned. So we do have standards already in our own community.
I have a question for you. Given the level of public outreach, obviously there's a lot of interest in these 2 major areas up north. Is the development, can we look at creating more intensive development standards? Given there's, on one side, there's sensitivity of any development, the other sensitivity that is, this is a great opportunity for some really special projects. Maybe look at incorporating a little bit elevated development standards for those particular categories.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that's absolutely correct. I mean, we're talking about very large areas here. Right now, we are in the process of looking at the North Peoria Gateway zoning application. So that's the opportunity to look at it, break it down into smaller units, look at land use and development standards for those areas. We will be embarking on the Peoria Innovation Core over the next year, but that's an opportunity really to drill down, understand the land use and topographical constraints, understand the, what might be compatible uses and compatible development standards given the context and the proximity to other uses. So that's the opportunity to drill and really create those tailored standards that make the most sense in those areas.
Yeah, I'm thinking like densities, heights.
Yes.
Design review standards, things like that.
All of those things, that's correct.
Great,
Yep.
thank you. Any other commissioners with comments? Okay, seeing none, we will open the public comment section. I have 2 speaker request forms. One I know is on the 4 items we discussed. The other is just a general call. Megan Staub, is it related to these 4 items, or is it more of a general? Because we will have time for a more general. Okay, all right, we'll do it at the end when we do the non-agenda item public discussion. Miss Laura Page, just remind you have 3 minutes for your.
Chair, if you wouldn't mind, I would like to also change mine to basically general public comment. I don't really specifically have a comment
Okay.
on 6R. Okay?
Got it. We'll go
Thank
back.
you.
We'll come back.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, I guess we'll close the public comment on items 3, 4, 5, and 6R. Next item is the call to the public. So now, Ms. Staub, if you would like to come back up. Remind you just have 3 minutes.
Okay.
So thank you.
I'll make this brief, so don't worry. So the city of Peoria is where I've called home for almost my entire life. And it's become very disheartening to hear that our city leaders are not listening to our concerns. Furthermore, it's really frustrating to hear the solution to so many of our concerns is just move. Is if you don't like the direction we're going in, then leave. How is that serving our community? I would like the city of Peoria to really start listening to its residents and working with us to develop the land near 303 and Lake Pleasant, because we all know it's going to be developed, but we can develop it into something great. You would see that there's much opposition against an air park and industrial facilities in this area, and it's not just from the Mesquite district, but from all over Peoria.
All right, Ms. Laura Page.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I've made comments before, so I don't want to, necessarily go over those again. I am one of the people that have said I do believe this should go to a vote. I don't believe all major amendments should go to a vote, but I do believe that this one should. I just want to specifically, I did write in comments, and I want to specifically address the Exhibit 6 of the general plan, section, which is implementation, section 8.6, adoption, pages 8-7 and 8-8. And in my public comments, what I'm specifically concerned with, in the general plan there, it talks about the criteria for adopting a major amendment. And there are 6 criteria, and I believe that 3 of those 6 have not been met. And it says that all 6 mustn't be met in order for the council to adopt this. And in the current state, I don't believe that it's prudent, and I would ask that you not recommend the council to adopt it based on the fact that for sure, number 3, the amendment will not adversely impact the community as a whole or a portion of the community by significantly altering acceptable existing land use patterns. It does. Requiring larger and more expensive improvements to roads, sewer, water delivery systems that are needed to support the prevailing land uses and which therefore may impact the developments in other areas. It does. Adversely impacting existing uses because of increased traffic on existing systems. It does. Affecting the livability of the area or the health and safety of the residents. It does. So I don't, it doesn't follow what it needs to follow in order to be adopted. The amendment, it says, number 5, is consistent with overall intent of the general plan and other adopted plan codes and ordinances. I don't believe so that it is either, but mainly, my main reason, and in my letter to the Planning Commission, or to Lori Devers in the Planning Department, is that the amendment constitutes an overall improvement to the general plan and is not solely for the good or benefit of a particular landowner or owner.
Family, if they really want to see the entire meeting, please have them come and view this particular video. After that, yes, we will be back before you on September 5th, so enjoy Labor Day, but we will hope that you're back for September 5th for the following meeting. With that, Chair, I conclude it.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Deaver. Any reports from the commission before we adjourn the meeting? Seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.